רפאנו אדוני ונרפא, הושיענו וניוושע, אל קרוב לכל קורב, אך קרוב ליראיו ישוע. We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again be whole. הושיע את עמך וברך את נחלתך, ורעים ונעשאים עד העולם. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, אנא אדוני הושיענה. מודים אנחנו לך, שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו לעולם ועד. מודים אנחנו לך, צור חיינו, מגן ישנו, אתה הוא לדור ודור. מודים אנחנו לך לעולם ועד. For the sun that rises in the east, for the seas that roar a prayer, for the stillness of a snowfall, for a breath of autumn air, for the grasp within my fingers, for a mind that makes me whole, for the voice that God has given me to speak the truth within my soul. Modi, anachnu lach. Modim, anachnu lach. Modim, anachnu lach. Leolam vaed. Ve'al, ve'al, ve'al nisecha shebecho yom imanu, shebecho yom imanu. Ve'al, ve'al niflotecha v'tovotecha, erev avoker v'tzorai. For the laughter of the children, for the way they greet the day, with their endless stream of questions, they remind us how to play. And for the ones we call beloved, who take away our fear, they tell us without saying it, remember I am here. Remember I am here. Modim, anachnu lach. Modim, anachnu lach. Modim, anachnu lach. Leolam vaed. Sur chayenu, magen yishenu, atahu ledor vador. Modim, anachnu lach. Leolam vaed. Modim, modim. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech Adon, lechol ha-shalom. Ki ata hu melech Adon, lechol ha-shalom. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav, Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. טוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם תשים לעולם.
Turn to you. Sorry. Take 4. We return to you. We return to you. We return to you, Avrum Malkeinu. We return to you. We return to you. We return to you, Avrum Malkeinu. We return to you. Return to you. We return to you. You can play around with that.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב מי שברך אמותינו שרה רבקה לאה ורחל may the one who blessed our mothers may the one who blessed our fathers hear our prayer hear our prayer hear our prayer hear our prayer and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. May our hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Mi sheberach avoteinu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov.
בידו הפקיד רוחי, והייתי שם והגירה, ואם רוחי גבייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. ואם רוחי גבייתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safely in your hand. Beyado afkir ruchi, beiti shan ve'yaira, ve'im ruchi geviyati, Adonai li velo yira. Ve'im ruchi geviyati, Adonai li velo yira. Beyado afkid ruchi, beiti shan ve'yaira, ve'im ruchi geviyati, Adonai li velo yira.
Afternoon, welcome. My name is Philip Rice. I'm one of the rabbis here at Congregation Micah. And we thank Rabbi Lori and Cantor Josh Goldberg for opening our service today with song as we gather together in the shadow of a great loss. Death has taken Avrum Avi Poster. And we are here to mourn and to express condolences and to share some of our anger and our pain. And to, as my colleagues suggested with the song, place and entrust Avi's spirit and his body into the hands of the eternal. Knowing that we are all filled with sorrow, with pain, allow me to share some of my hopes for what might happen this afternoon. It's my hope that this service, the pictures, the music, the speakers, will bring, if nothing else, a fitting tribute to Avi. It's my hope that here at Micah, each of you will find the presence of other people who are hurting and recognize what Avi knew and lived, that we are all one family, connected to one another and responsible for one another. So let's draw near to one another in our need for love and strength. It's my hope that here at this hour, we might gain a stronger sense of Avi's community. And as we expected, it is a large one. Because as Avi's life testifies to, when you share your love with the world, sometimes it shares it back. So welcome as well to all people who are watching us online. It's my hope that somehow you will sense the love that we all feel in this room. We hope somehow, all of us, to have a sense of connection and a sense especially with the holy. And so it's my hope that God be with all of us in this sacred endeavor as we engage in this difficult task of burying and mourning our friend. Whatever united you with Avi in your life, we Jews believe death does not sever. The companionship that you shared with him along your own life's path will continue through the tenderness of memory. And so in times of grief, the Jewish people are taught to listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures, to the wisdom of the Torah, to our ancestors before us, which remind us that we too one day will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We hear now the words of Psalm 23 in Hebrew.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot sheyar bitzeni halmei menuchot ינעלני נפשי ישובב ינחני במעגלי צדק ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו גם כי ילך בגיא צל מוות לא ירא רק כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים אדוני רואי לא אחסר אדוני רואי לא אחסר
you sort of know you're a macher, like a bigwig in the Jewish community, when politicians and dignitaries and multiple rabbis attend your funeral. So Rabbi Shana Mackler is here on behalf of all of our local rabbis.
The wisdom of our tradition teaches us that in these moments of painful memory and deep loss, that we should treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to create some blessing, to conquer some evil, to relieve some suffering, to love and be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. We pray, help us, God, to fulfill the promise that is in each of us, and so to conduct ourselves that generations hence it will be true to say of us, the world is better, because for a brief space they lived in it. This echoes Avi's life. Our lives, our city, our world is better, because for a brief space Avi lived in it. And without a doubt, Avi used his life well, apprehending truth and conquering evil and creating blessing wherever he went, relieving suffering, loving, and being loved. We will hear of his lasting achievements and the many ways that he taught us and mentored and supported so many of us. I was lucky enough to get on his radar and his listservs nearly 20 years ago when I first arrived in Nashville, as with a warm embrace he brought me into the fight for immigrant rights and brought me into the fold of building bridges with community partners. Others have said in remembering Avi this week that if I was at an event and I saw him there, I knew I was on the right side of the issue, indeed on the right side of history. His inner idealist made us all more hopeful. The values by which he lived his life with purpose and direction caused each moment to be precious. For Avi, it was a chance to make an impact, a connection, to make a difference. Each moment for Avi was a chance to build where others might tear down, to hope where others despair, and to repair where others resign. Every moment, every interaction, he modeled a deep love, a shining conscience with compassion for all humanity. And he seized every moment to remind us of our ethic that in the command to love our neighbor, it was not a geographical distinction, but a moral obligation. In seeking justice, he bore no bias, really, and recognized that even when people do not meet eye to eye, he taught us that our problems were really our disconnect resides not in the disagreement itself, but when we might be disrespectful. And so he embodied that kind of empathy that our world is in desperate need of. To honor Avi and to ensure that his legacy is a blessing, it is for us to act upon the realization and the responsibility to build that kind and just world, that peaceful world that we want, gaining courage from his compass, inspiration from his integrity, and endurance from remembering how he made justice and joy sing together. Zichrono livracha, may we work together to ensure that Avi's memory, his legacy, and his life is an everlasting blessing. Amen.
Throughout the Torah, the Bible, and really all of rabbinic literature, there are these descriptions of the type of people upon which our tradition places high value. Here's one from Psalm 15. It says, "One who walks upright and practices justice, who speaks the truth in their heart, on whose tongue there is no deceit, who does no evil to their fellow." So, these were some of the qualities that characterized Avi's life. Yeah, he was honest, and he was upright, and he spoke the truth. And anyone else personally that was more dedicated to the triumph of justice in our society? Avi was a person of principle, and he stood up for his convictions. And I think especially the causes he believed in. There was no camouflage, we would say. There was no posture. In Hebrew, toko v'karo, we say, he was the same within as he was without. And so these are just some of the many qualities I got to know about him. But there are so many of you here who knew him far more intimately. And so we're going to invite forward a number of speakers to share those thoughts. And our first is right here, Tom Negri.
Thank you, Rabbi. My condolences to all here, but especially to Joey, family and friends. Wow, where do you start with Avi? Avi, I wore a tie. Avi and I agreed that we'd never wear a tie again. Well, Avi, guess what? You know, Avi, in my opinion, is a hero's hero. He made a difference in our community, in our state, in our country. We need a dozen more Avis. Much of what Avi was involved in here in Nashville revolved around education. For as we know, Avi led 3 schools to Blue Ribbon Presidential Awards back in Illinois. Avi served 4 terms as the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce Citizens Panel Report Card, which was no joy. And if you know Avi, he wasn't that close to the chamber. But he did it, and he did it well. And who was better qualified, if you really think about it? In addition, he served 5 years for the MNPS, Metropolitan Public Schools Family Advisory Council for Special Education, and 6 years as co-chair of the Middle Schools Transformation Committee, besides as a member of the MNPS Diversity Committee and a variety of other committees aimed at social, emotional learning and restorative discipline practices. Personally, I have no idea what half of that meant. But Avi knew what that meant, and he practiced it day in and day out. He was an educator at heart, and he never stopped educating me and people in this room, because that's who Avi was. But for some reason, I detect there's an educational thingamajiggy here somewhere throughout Avi's life. Avi also served as chairman of A Voice for the Reduction of Poverty in Nashville, founder of CEI, which is the Coalition for Education about Immigration. Of course, education is in there. Served with the Clergy of Tolerance, and the Clergy of Tolerance was an amazing group. We'd have breakfast 4 times a year, and it was 350 to 400 different clergy members within Middle Tennessee. And it was awesome. And they had a pledge that they would talk about human dignity, immigrant rights at a homily during that first quarter. And it was just awesome that he did that so well. Avi served, as many of you know, as the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable, the Muslim Jewish Circle of Friends, vice chair of the Nashville Human Relations Commission, which was really interesting because I became the interim chair. Boy, having Avi as a chairperson was really a challenge, because every meeting was about the good he could do, we could do here in Nashville. Besides serving on many nonprofit boards such as Community Nashville, IDD for Affordable Housing for People with Disabilities, Nashville, chapter of the New Jim Crow, and the Rochelle Center for Adults with Developmental Disabilities, where I met and closely worked with Avi. Did I mention TURC, the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition? Nashville for all of us. The successful effort to keep our city from implementing an English-only language policy. Nashville would not be the same without Avi doing these causes, these things close to his heart. Family of Abraham, the YWCA Legislative Advocacy Committee for Community Relations Committee for the Jewish Federation. Did I mention the National Board Service on Peacemakers, J Street, and the Jewish Council for Public Affairs? I'll stop there because I'll keep you all afternoon, and I don't want to do that either. Avi never met anyone he didn't find something to like in them, which is like really cool. You know, because after a meeting, I'd say to him, you know, so what did you think? And he'd start out, everything was positive. But then he'd go, well, you could have tweaked this a little bit, you know? In fact, we had this Friday thing. And this Friday thing comes from way back. I lived in a hotel for 10 years in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, Avi was a guest at very often, bringing students from Chicago, and I had no idea. I had never met him at the time. But my two sons grew up in this hotel for 10 years and with my wife Ines, and every Friday we'd decide that we'd get tired of room service and we'd go out. So it was either Popeyes or Chinese food. All right? So Avi would call me over the last 23 years and ask me on a Friday, is it chicken or egg roll? And it didn't matter where I was. I was in the Mediterranean, in South America, here, all right? We didn't miss a Friday, but for last Friday. As mentioned, we first met on a nonprofit board, hit it off immediately. We agreed on almost every issue. We had minor disagreements, but there was never a time we didn't talk, which is like, not speaking to Avi for a day was like really a bummer. Avi was the ultimate educator, always willing to listen, learn, and of course, teach others. We found common ground in the needs of those with the disabilities community, immigration, and religion. Being the Italian Catholic that I am, I always said I was Jewish first. I remember Christ, you know. And he was a Jew, and I said, Avi! Avi would take me to meet the rabbis, and I would take him to meet the priests. All right? Father Joe Pat Brian would call Avi all the time, you know, and on Jewish holidays. So he would, pass along his thoughts on the holiday to Avi. I mentioned the Clergy for Tolerance earlier. What I didn't mention is the freshers group. There are a few freshers in the room, and I know we're going to have a rather large freshers breakfast coming up. I believe it's on the 8th or so. But, and it was held at the best restaurant in town, by the way. Yeah. I've never figured out what freshers means. But I'm going to learn at the next meeting, I promise you. The freshers group discussed political issues, and it never ends in an argument. It always ends in a conversation on what we could be doing better for the city, what we could be doing better for the state, the county, the country. How do we honor Avi today, in my humble opinion? But not only today, but in the future. I propose we act like Avi Day. We act like Avi Day today. We act like Avi Day tomorrow. We act like Avi Day is every day. Because that's who Avi was, a caring soul. And Avi would like me to mention, I know he would like me to mention, that there's another funeral in Memphis today for Tyree Nichols. And last but not least, there's been a lot written about Avi and Joey and the wonderful things he's done for our community. The Kill Hunt wrote an article, I think it's in today's Tennessean. If you haven't seen it yet lately, you can read it online, and I think it's a wonderful article, many of whom here are quoted in it. Let's not forget who Avi is, was, and will always be remembered. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Richard Berkowitz.
Thank you, rabbis. It is said in the Talmud, the true guardians of a community are the teachers. Revere your teacher as you would heaven. This is an Avi hat. Tom, I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to ask everybody who has a tie to loosen it in honor of Avi. In case I stop speaking at any time, it's not because I'm emotionally spent, but it's because Avi has pressed the pause button on the Comcast remote. Joey, thank you for giving me, our family, Avi's students, an opportunity to share our love for you and Avi today. You know how much we love you. Tammy and I will always be indebted to you and Avi for serving as surrogate parents to Josh and nurturing his career here in Nashville. And I really thought Avi loved him until he called me one day to tell me Josh was emptying the refrigerator and asked if he ever stopped eating. I thought the love affair was over, but it's endured. My name is Rich Berkowitz. I was graduated in 1971 from the East Prairie University, that Avi coined the term now, in Skokie, where Avi cut his teeth as a teacher. I was in his third grade class of social studies students, and I am 52 years later in the middle of 3 generations of Berkowitzes that have come to know and love Avi and Joey as part of our family. My 3 younger siblings also had Mr. Poster as their teacher. My sister Michelle, having the privilege of teaching with him, to say Avi's passing is a loss is an understatement of the greatest magnitude. All of his students loved and cherished him, but as importantly, Avi cherished the relationships that he had with each and every one of his students. In his class, there were no favorites. His goal was to reach everyone, no exceptions. At my age, most people would have to pull out their yearbooks to remind them who their 8th grade social studies teacher was, let alone be friends with them for a lifetime. Not so for any of us who had Avi as a teacher. We will always be grateful for this. East Prairie University was the prequel to Avi's Nashville story. The great things he has accomplished here in the Nashville community are predicated on the ideology that he cultivated during his early teaching years and spewed upon his students. One of his greatest lessons was always do the right thing. But in doing so, he made it clear that even doing the right thing could be fraught with repercussions, as was articulated by 3 of Avi's students a year ahead of me, who in 8th grade decided to cut school to attend the Vietnam moratorium. They are still on house arrest. But every student has a memory of Avi, whether it be memories of Avi teaching while sitting on his desk, chewing incessantly on a straw, classroom discussions of Orwell's Animal Farm, discussing sports, and extolling the virtues of cheering for the underdog, like when the New York Jets won the Super Bowl in 1969. Remember the New York Jets, foreshadowing of how Avi took care of the marginalized. But I think to get a true flavor of what Avi was like as a teacher, when he came to East Prairie, our friend Corey Levins writes, what Avi brought to us as a teacher who was wise beyond his years. He was someone we could relate to as part of our lives and who had the same goals, beliefs, concerns that we had, and more than anything, almost, he loved and coached basketball. When you combine all of those assets with the incredible pedagogic ability, it was a foregone conclusion that we would become his acolytes, whether he liked it or not. When he spoke, we listened, we questioned, we learned. But probably one of the most amazing things is how many of these relationships that Avi had with so many of his students and morphed into lifelong friendships, as is manifested by the email thread that Avi started as COVID broke out in March of 2020 with 6 of us, now comprised of almost 10,000 emails. The discussions range from politics to sports to social injustices to comedy to literature to who had the best hot dog. Name the topic, we discussed it. And Avi, while treating us colleagues, he never stopped teaching. He never stopped challenging us. He never, ever stopped motivating us. But like the great teacher he was, he let the students do the teaching as well. We will continue it in his honor. The one thing we all regret is that we never got to take that Selma to Montgomery trip that Avi wanted to plan for us. Like I said, forever, the teacher. We will get there, Avi. Promise. This is a surreal moment for me, for all of us actually, as Avi was supposed to endure, to always be there for us, to be our rock in times of need, to help us figure out the next steps, to tell us the job will get done, to tell us we need to do better, that we can do more. We've lost a teacher, a mentor, but most importantly, we've lost a friend. In 2014 interview, when Avi received his Human Rights Service Award, Avi said that when it came to leading in human rights, I have great hope that Nashville will be the star in the sky that everyone looks up to. No, Avi, you are now the star in the sky that we all look up to. Hopefully we have made you proud. Rest easy, sweet friend. You love so deeply. You live so loudly. You inspired so many. We love you. Panthers on 3, Avi. Panthers on 3.
Thank you. We're going to hear from his 2 nephews and his niece, Matthew and Samantha and Daniel are going to come up next.
Hello. For those of you who don't know us, we are Avi's nephews and niece, Matthew, Daniel, and Samantha. Sorry. Better known as the Boys Club, which is a very exclusive club. So exclusive, in fact, that besides Avi, we're the only members. The Boys Club was founded by Uncle Avi, or Unks as we called him, in the early 90s with a mission of community outreach and self-improvement. And we took that mission very, very seriously. We reached out to nearly every hot dog stand in the community and improved ourselves by eating a tremendous amount of hot dogs. But of course, since Avi was a born teacher, the Boys Club had loftier pursuits as well. You know, activities with more educational value. Things like attending professional wrestling matches, writing your name in a corn cob, analyzing the films of Steven Seagal, and balancing things on your head. Currently, the club is not accepting new members, so please do not ask. When Joey married Avi in 1986, when we were 8, 5, and 1. A love affair began. Us with Uncle Avi, and Uncle Avi with us. Well, not Sam at first. 5-year-old Sam iced his ass, but thankfully that only lasted a year or so. He became our uncle by marriage, but you would never know it from the way he treated us. He was at every single event. Every game, graduation, birthday party, tons of family trips, every single milestone, he was always there. Like when I realized an hour before the Friday night service before my bar mitzvah that I had completely failed to learn the prayer I was about to lead. It was unks with zero judgment who helped me cram. Or when I severely cut myself shaving mere moments before my high school graduation, it was unks to the rescue. He was always, always there, to the point where, to this day, all of our childhood friends call him Uncle Avi. Yeah?
I would imagine a lot of people are going to get up here, as they already have, and talk about Avi's social justice work, the committees, the boards, the countless hours he selflessly dedicated to helping others. But when we read his obituary outlining all of this stuff that he did for the community, we actually had no idea. It's not because we didn't care or that we didn't ask, okay? But when we would ask him anything about himself, he would quickly pivot to pumping us up. He wanted nothing to do with ever talking about himself, ever. It was always about us, well, and Joey. When we were younger, he used to tell us these stories where we were heroes. I don't know who knows about the hero stories. I'm sure there's many of you. The hero stories is what he called them, and years later as adults, whenever we would talk to him, even though we weren't sitting on his lap, hearing a tale of Daniel making some winning shot for the Bulls, or Matthew heroically sitting on a guitar for Aerosmith, or me winning a gold medal figure skating at the Olympics, he still made us always feel like heroes. Of course, reading his obituary, everything he did, everything he dedicated his life to, everything he stood for, it was clear that this entire time he was the real hero. He also did this for our kids, mine, Emma and Sophie, Izzy and Mika and Booker. Same love affair, just went down to the generation like it was nothing, and they loved him as well. And Avi was a teacher. He taught us some profound life lessons as well. Kindness, generosity, never take yourself too seriously. But there was always one lesson that was way more important than all the rest. In honor of Avi, swizzling, it's called.
Okay, swizzling, for the uninitiated, is the process of scoring a hot dog in order to maximize the charable surface area on a kosher dog. So what you do is you take your knife, you make a slight incision, okay, and then you turn the dog in one hand, or swizzle, using a knife to make concentric circles around the entire dog. Avi invented this technique, and it was non-negotiable. A non-swizzled dog wasn't worth its weight in kosher beef. But of course, there's more to learn from Avi's swizzling, because most of us would look at a hot dog and say, good enough. But not Avi. He knew there was always a way to make something better. So when you think about it, Avi swizzled everything he touched. He swizzled every school he worked for. He swizzled Nashville. He swizzled affordable housing. He swizzled social justice. He swizzled prison reform. He swizzled Israel. Swizzled the Jewish community. He swizzled the three of us, and I'm sure he swizzled everyone in this room in one way or another. He made us all better. So there's one more thing about Avi that we saw firsthand that we'd like to share with you, which is Avi loved to get random groups of people to do random stuff. Like the Tiger Paw salute. He has a picture in his office of doing the salute with Leanne Rimes, and I think that's Dean Cain. He would get complete strangers to balance stuff on their heads with us. He loved it.
And he wasn't much of a singer, but he loved this song. He had an unreasonable love of this song called Jada. Do people know this song? Yes. He loved getting groups of people together. He would always get people to sing it.
In restaurants.
In
He would
restaurants.
just look at the table next to us and he would start singing it low and then he would start singing it louder and the next thing you know, he's standing up. Everybody now in the entire restaurant that doesn't know him is singing this song everywhere we went and we weren't embarrassed. It was just cool. We couldn't believe it.
Anyone else doing it, we'd be humiliated, but for some reason, Avi could get away with it. And so, I know this is insane, but I would love if we could all just...
Because he would
love it. He would think, as he would say, it was hysterical. So, if you know it, can you sing along? Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay. You know it? Okay.
Okay, right, here we go. It goes like this. Jada, 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 jing, jing, jing.
Everybody.
Jada, 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 jing, jing, jing. Here's the different part. Ready? It's a simple melody. It's so easy and appealing to me. Come on, jada, 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 jing, jing, jing.
We hope you can hear us singing your song. Thank you.
I think they just wanted to sing in Music City. We're going to hear from another friend. We're looking for Greg Crocker to come forward, please.
I heard a little noise when they mentioned that he was a basketball coach. I remember Avi, our staff played a radio station in Chicago, and Avi nailed a baseline shot with about 3 seconds to go for our victory. So had completely forgotten that, but he did have a little basketball ability. Tom, I want to talk later. Heard so much about you. And terrific speech. Where are the kids? Oh, you know, I met you guys back then, and it's pretty easy to see why I loved you all. Just terrific. My name's Greg Crocker. I was an associate of Avi's. First of all, before I do that, I don't want to forget. Look at his face. What does that say to you? When he had that face, you were going to get on board. You can't tell that guy no. So it's like my dad is still on my shoulder when he passed. Put that little picture on your shoulder. When you have self-doubt, remember that. He's right behind you. And that was a very good choice of pictures. Deeply honored and privileged to Joey for the ability to talk just a minute about Avi. Avi Poster made a difference in his approach to life, to his marriage, to education, to volunteer work. He made a difference. Excuse me. Anyone who met, talked with, listened to, or was listened to by him knew they were interacting with a genuine individual who truly cared about the human condition. This is the theme that will be repeated, has been repeated, and it's okay, because that is who he was. He made a difference. My dad once said, if you don't like Avi Poster, you don't like people. Avi was the very definition of a people person. When he engaged you, you had his full attention, always. He made you feel special in a way that is hard to describe, but you knew when it happened. Avi started his career, as mentioned, in Skokie, Rich, great job of going through that. And then he came to our district. We're northwest suburb, Wheeling, Buffalo Grove. He came to us and was a principal at 3 different schools. He started out at Riley School, then went to Holmes Middle School, where he was for a long time, and then he completed his career at Tarkington Elementary School. He was an advocate for innovative programs in our schools, chiefly in the area of curriculum and instruction. As a leader, he encouraged students, staff, parents, and the community to be the best version of themselves by modeling love, acceptance, inquisitiveness, and common purpose. He worked tirelessly to build a community in which all individuals could pursue their dreams under the umbrella of inclusion. And, you know, his work here certainly typifies that in many more directions than we even got to see. He could walk the talk as a teacher, thus having credibility when asking teachers to try new strategies. He loved getting back in the classroom. On many occasions, he volunteered to take the class of a teacher who might need to attend to personal business on a given day. He also always tried to work things out for people. I can't remember him ever saying to any one of us, "Oh, you know, if I do that, it wouldn't be fair to other people. We have to be consistent." Not Avi. He would try to work out whatever you wanted to try to do. As mentioned, national award from the U.S. Department of Education at all of the schools he was the principal at. And this is no small task. It's a lot of grunt work and a lot of pulling people together, just like he's done in Nashville, to get a common purpose and really illustrate the strengths of your organization. It was important to him that students interact with and receive a broad range of experiences, especially in social justice. To that end, he sponsored multiple after-school and weekend programs that brought students and community leaders together to learn about and pull for each other. He was one of the original movers of the Chicago Area Happiness Club and helped start local satellite clubs in our district. He started the Snowflake program at Holmes, as well as Hugs Not Drugs. And first event I went to was a Saturday. He had the whole wrestling team, all of the basketball players, volleyball players, hugging. These are middle school kids who, you know, you don't think of them as being that affectionate, but he had everybody with their arms around each other, singing "Lean on Me." And it was pretty powerful, pretty powerful. Throughout his career, he closely worked with the local social service agencies to assist individual students. His work with Omni, which was a local social service agency, was especially noteworthy and helped secure grants for our schools. No one outworked Avi. He helped create a school environment that fostered individual and collective achievement for all stakeholders. He actually saw himself as a social worker as much as he did an administrator. You know, it was not uncommon for us to run into former students of Avi's. Mentioned the Tarkington salute. There's 3 Tarkington gals there and all you guys. We're at a train station one time going to a White Sox game, and poster! Some parent of his is doing the signal across the platform. You know, it's pretty cool. We would run into kids out at restaurants, and more than once, I'd ask him, "What did you remember about Mr. Poster?" He could get 800 junior high kids to listen to him stone silent, and no one messed around in his assembly. So he had an ability to communicate, and they knew, even little kids knew, that he was serious and he was pulling for them. Upon his retirement, obviously, as a focus shifted to Joey, they moved to Nashville. Unlike some of us, however, his retirement days weren't spent on the golf course. He immediately brought his skills and passion to you all. As the people of Nashville soon discovered, Avi had absolutely zero call reluctance. He would call anyone. There are more than 650 schools in Cook County, but he managed to persuade the Chicago Bulls coach Phil Jackson to come and speak at an event. And a lot of you who've known Avi probably heard this story, the time that he got Minnie Minoso, recent Hall of Famer White Sox, to come to Holmes Middle School. He was supposed to speak at 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, Avi was not notorious for showing up early. He'd be there at 10 o'clock at night, but he'd roll in with the kids. But we had a deadline for teacher evaluations, and it was that day that Minnie was supposed to be there. So Avi got to school like at 6:30 in the morning, and there's one car in the parking lot already. It's Minnie Minoso. Minnie, what are you doing here? Oh, I didn't know if I could find a school or not. So Avi spent 3.5 hours engaging Minnie Minoso, putting his own stuff, and obviously he loved talking to Minnie, so that wasn't that big of a sacrifice, I have so many memories of Avi, far too many to share, but I loved him like a brother. He was consistently there for me, especially in the lower moments of my life. We shared the joy of working with kids and telling stories to each other about our successes with them. Obviously, you're hearing many tributes. Rich was quoted in the Tennessean, "My siblings and I are the tip of the iceberg of hundreds, maybe thousands of students whose lives he positively impacted. His legacy will live on through all these people." Be like Avi, make a difference.
We've got another family member, Kevin Kaminsky, is going to come forward.
I went no tie, okay? I'm not loosening it, it's just not here. I even took my coat off, Tom. Oh, wow. God, how did he make this seem so easy? I think every one of us have probably seen Unks up here in some other time, and he just found a way. I'm gonna do my best. Joe, I love you to death, and I'm doing this one right now for you. Wow. So many familiar faces for me here because I was so fortunate to be invited to Nashville so many times from Avi and Joey once my father passed away. And they took me in like I was their own son. For you that don't know me, I'm Kevster, Honey, Babe, or any other cute name you may mistaken call a significant other. But Uncle Avi would kind of call all of us that. There was no barrier, there were no boundaries, and I believe he was that way with his students, as I hear more. But everything that he said and did was genuine, it was real, and you continue to hear it from everybody today. Somehow the torch has been passed on to me to do this public speaking on behalf of our entire Poster Kaminsky family. I hope I do it justice for everybody. Luckily for me, I've known Unks since the day I was born. My grandfather, Bob, and Avi's mother, Fanny, were brother and sister. When Avi's mother, Fanny, decided to move back to Israel to be with his sister, Sarah, my grandfather promised Avi's mom that he and my grandmother would take him in and would treat him as if he was his own son. To this day, Avi's sister, nieces Yael and Nava, and great-nephew Itamar still live in Israel, wishing they were here. I know my Aunt Susie, my father's sister, spoke with them, and this loss has truly affected the entire globe, not just locally, not just Chicago, but the entire globe. Growing up and trying to explain to my friends how/why I called Avi my uncle, it was pretty simple. When my grandparents pseudo-adopted Avi and he started calling them Uncle Dad and Aunt Mom. My Aunt Susie would say she had 3 brothers, my father, my Uncle Larry, and Avi. My father would say that he had 2 brothers, and one that he may have even liked more than his actual blood brother. My Uncle Larry would probably say that Avi was the brother that took his place as number 2 on the list, according to my grandparents. He was just part of the Kaminsky family, and always was, and I wouldn't have known anything other than him being my actual uncle. He was there for me for every single sporting game that I ever had. If I looked up in the stands, I'd see my dad and I would see Avi. And if any of you had ever met my father, Mark, he was just a larger version of that picture. Add 5 or 6 inches, a couple more pounds, and obviously get rid of the ponytail. But the beard, the face, it looked like 2 twins kind of sitting up there. You could not miss them. As I was shared this morning with a story by my aunt, when Avi first brought Joey to meet my grandparents, they scrutinized her as if she was going to be their daughter-in-law. My grandmother was a little bit more than obvious about it, according to my aunts and uncles. And my grandma was a tough one. My wife was fortunate enough to meet her before she passed, and even she would agree that this was not an easy nut to crack. But after my grandmother got to know Joey and saw how much they loved each other, and more than anything, how happy she made Avi, my grandparents welcomed her with open arms. Aunt Joey, again, I cannot imagine how intimidating it was for you to meet my grandmother. Luckily, Grandpa Bob, or Uncle Dad to Avi, was an amazing man, and I'm sure made it easier for you. There's too many adjectives that I could use to describe my uncle: passionate, empathetic, hilarious, kind, patient, but most of all, giving. He gave up his entire life for others. The one thing is, I continue to go on, and I think everybody probably remembers this, and if we were to close our eyes right now, I'm not going to make you sing or actually even close your eyes, but I don't think any of us will ever forget his laugh, his cackle, and it was so genuine, so real, and I would do anything I could growing up to hear that laugh. He was and still is my role model as I navigate through life. Just recently, I was talking to him about a new non-for-profit basketball program that I had created with teams from the inner city of Chicago, Newark, New Jersey, North Philadelphia, Puerto Rico, and how we were having our tournament here in Gatlinburg, Tennessee this year. First thing out of his mouth, which was always the first thing out of his mouth when I spoke to him, was, "I am so proud of you." Instantly followed by, "How can I help and how can I get involved?" He was involved in a million things and somehow managed to give all of himself to every committee/board he served on. The most important board he ever served on in my life, however, is that one of being on the family board. He was the chairman and CEO of our Kaminsky family structure. If he was at the table, he held the gavel. We listened. The glue, as my aunt would say. But for me, it was so much more than that. He was not only my dad's first cousin, he was his brother, his best friend, his social chairman, because Joey and Avi would have to get my dad out of the house. He was his psychologist. I'm sure for a number of years he was probably my father's bank. And he was my dad's #1 fan. Right now, I just picture this, and this is kind of how I've been getting over this or dealing with this the last couple of days. But Avi is holding court in the hot dog stand that he and my father decided to create up there. And he's got Muhammad Ali, Arthur Ashe, the late Bill Russell, and they're all sitting there listening to him tell stories right now. I could go on and share stories for days. However, I'm going to leave with these 3 things. Number 1, Joe, I will do my best to give the same hugs that he did, that none of us will ever forget, forever to you. Number 2, when my father passed away, a friend of his looked at me and just reminded me of how lucky I was that my dad was my father. To everyone here, even though there is grief and sadness, I know I consider myself to be incredibly lucky and fortunate, as all of you should, to have had Avi in your life. The time and this did not matter, but I can honestly look in a mirror every single day and say how lucky I was, as opposed to how it's not fair now. I am one of the lucky ones that had him in my life for 45 years. And last but not least, Uncle Avi, not only have you shaped my life, every single child I've been fortunate to work with over the past 20 years, I will continue to preach your values, and I hope everyone else here does. Love, be kind, accept all walks of life as being equal, and give everyone a chance. The world would just be a much more beautiful place with more Avi posters. I love you. Thank you.
And our final sanctuary speaker this morning is going to come forward, Andrea Copold.
I'm speaking on behalf of my husband, who just had extensive knee surgery and was forbidden to fly. So please imagine that I'm 6 feet tall, with brown short hair, a goatee, and a booming baritone voice. Here goes. Let me first say that my not being here today is just wrong. For nearly 40 years, Avi and I would talk about who would read the eulogy at the other's funeral. I can't believe that the answer is neither of us. My name is Larry Cobalt. I'm guessing most of you know who I am, because I'm guessing that Avi bragged about me to you. Because that's who Avi was. He bragged about all of his friends. For a man whose impact on the world surpassed the rest of us together, he bragged about the impact each of us had. And today, despite my not being able to be there, I know that everyone is thinking about Av as their friend, their partner, their recipient of his attention. That's what he did. But with no apology, I'm simply going to say, get in line. Avi was not my best friend. He was the best friend I ever had, and there's a difference. Avi was best man at our wedding, a role he continued to take pride in. 6 months ago, Joey and Avi came to LA to celebrate Andrea's 60th birthday. He showed up wearing the best man hat that we had given him decades ago. But as we all know, especially in his adopted home here in Nashville, it's not the hat that makes the man. It's the man that makes the hat. And he never let us forget how honored he was to be our best man. So in his honor, I'm going to invoke the Avi rule on speaking. His best man speech was one for the ages. He left out nothing about Andrea or me, or Andrea and me. And I don't want to imply that he talked for a long time. But before he ended, Andrea and I had celebrated our 3rd anniversary. So, settle in. I met Avi days after Joey met Avi. Joey and I worked together writing commercials for McDonald's. More than that, Joey and I had already become so tethered in friendship that the minute she said she met this guy she kind of liked, I inserted myself into the approval process. Who knew that this man in her life would become best man in mine? And I know right now many of you are going, yeah, I had that too. Because that's what Avi did. He cared. Those, for me, are the 2 words that describe him. And there isn't a soul in this room who didn't know it or personally experience how much he cared. Despite our relationship, though, we didn't talk every day. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that he and I would schedule calls, often on the weekend, because we knew the call might go on for hours. We had a lot to catch up on. After all, it might have been 10 days since the last deep dive into, well, everything. But in between those calls, he might occasionally send me an email. Occasionally, as in about every 10 minutes. Here's a little secret about Av. He liked email. But he didn't use it to keep in touch like some people. He used it to expand his voice. For a man involved in as many things as Avi's was, he needed technology to multiply his impact. I say that despite the fact that I probably never spoke to him without hearing about the 38 meetings he had attended that day, or reading the last op-ed he had written because, well, damn it, someone needed to say it. In sitting down to write this, I went to look something up that I knew he'd written to me in an email a while back. It was about Our Place, Nashville. This resulted in two things I wasn't expecting. One, I went onto Our Place's website only to find a memorial was already posted, and two lines leapt out. He was our biggest visionary, advocate, supporter, guide, advisor, cheerleading, and sounding board. We all know that as Avi. But it also referred to, and I quote, Joey, the woman who made him feel like the luckiest man in the world. And we all know that as well. For anyone who knew him, knew Joey, and knew how she made him feel like the luckiest man in the world. And Joey knew this because she told me thousands of times over thousands of days, felt like the luckiest woman in the world. And that's Avi, where everyone knew the impact he had on a community, and everyone knew the impact he and Joey had on one another. But I said two interesting things happened when I was looking something up on his emails. It brought to life the way Avi and I would talk about anything and everything. In his emails, he would pontificate on such a wide range of varying topics. Here's a sampling of things he wrote in just one short 6-week period. The White Sox, and the Cubs, Bears, Lakers, Rams, LeBron, Brady, Justin Fields, and slave labor used in Dubai for the Olympics. Every college team in every sport. He sent me emails titled, The Blood of Innocent Children, Arnold Schwarzenegger's message to Putin on Ukraine, CO2 emissions break all-time record, 87,820 split decisions by the Supreme Court, all of them wrong. Chicago's spooky things, or the brutality of nail clippers. Oh, and a few things about Jews. Just a few. And Muslims, Christians, and blacks, and Asians, and Hispanics, Republicans and Trumpers, and how fucked up the Democrats can be. Avi was all about what's happening in the world today. He took it upon himself to help people now, and not engage in kicking help down the road, even if it might have led to something good. For nobody is hurting in the future. To Avi, they're hurting now, and now is when we need to do something. But he did have a penchant for the future in one phenomenal way, wanting to celebrate his nieces and nephews. To him, they were the future, whether they were his sister Sarah's kids in Israel or Susan's kids closer to home. Many of you here today, and I know that Uncle Av meant to each of you as I have seen it since you were born. I've also seen it in my daughter Noah, who was born 17 years ago. Her birthday party was this past weekend, and when it looked like it was possible that Avi's funeral might be on that weekend, Noah said, "We have to go." And when I reminded her that she had her birthday party planned, she simply said, "Who cares about that? It's Uncle Av." And with apologies to Daniel and Matthew and Samantha and Kevin, Avi may have been an honorary uncle to Noah, but damned if she ever knew that. And that's what made Avi special. He simply made everyone feel special, because to him, they were. All of you were. I write this with tears because I can't be there today, but I do not write this with a broken heart. It can't break, no matter how tough a time I'm going through, because Avi is holding it together from the inside. Andrea, the woman who makes me feel like the luckiest man in the world, thank you for standing in for me today. As Avi would likely say, you were as important to him as I was. Sorry, and much better looking. His words, not mine. To Tommy and Randy and Erwin and Sylvia and Elliot, who was already with Avi talking about civil rights, thank you for keeping my friend in good hands all these years in Nashville. And to Joey, I can't love you. The beauty of being part of one of history's great love stories is that there are lyrics yet to be written. I can't tell you how many times Avi talked to me about making sure you would be okay when he was no longer around to pay the bills, give you your New Year's gift, or be the best Joey plugger in the world. That's what you do for the woman who made you feel like the luckiest man in the world. You will never be fine, but I promise you that you will be okay. We will all make sure of that. I will make sure of that. My last conversation with Avi was typical. I called him a dickhead. That was not uncommon for us. He would often lovingly call me an asshole. And the fact that this was how I will remember my last conversation with him is perfect. Av, if you're listening, you were the best friend, best man, and best dickhead this asshole could ever have had in his life. And all that made me feel like the luckiest friend and brother in the world. Thank you.
Well, I am certain it is easier to swear on the bima when you make your wife do it for you. You're a good sport. The words that have been shared in this space have been so beautiful, and for those of you who were part of Avi's life pre-Nashville, we are so grateful to have those stories and insight into who he was before we already welcomed the hero into our lives. In just a moment, we'll rise together for the words of El Male Rachamim and move to conclude our service before we go outside for graveside. I remember walking into a Jewish event here with my husband downtown a number of years ago. That's my husband. And we were both wearing name tags. Mine read Rabbi Lori Rice, and his read Rabbi Flip Rice. And the gentleman at the door greeted me with a handshake and said, "Welcome, hello, Lori." And then turned and greeted him, "Rabbi, so glad you're here." And 21 years ago when I was ordained, I had no idea how challenging it might be at times to be a rabbi and to be female at the same time. Avi would always refer to me as Rabbi Lori when we were in a public setting. But when it was just the two of us, when he would get up from his seat, usually right there with Joey, after Shabbat services, with his face mask hanging somewhere just below his nose, he would say, "Lor, great service." The only people in my life who call me Lor are my high school friends. It's a nickname of intimacy and decades of knowing. When I hear that name, I'm just me, before I became a rabbi, a mom, frankly, before I was a grown-up. Avi called me Lor, and I love that he did. He didn't do it out of disrespect, or to belittle me, or to patronize me. He called me Lor because he loved me just for me, simply, purely, in a way that Martin Buber described the I-thou relationship, one that is infused with the holy and the sacred. He called me Lor because his heart, that larger-than-life heart of his, felt intimately drawn to me and to all of you. Any one of us who received one of those 5 million emails a day from Avi knows that he had multiple quotes as his postscript at the bottom. And one of them, I was scrolling through, it was from the late John Lewis. "If you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it." I imagine that Avi got up in the morning each day, thanked God for his amazing, talented, beautiful wife, Joey, and then asked himself how he could change the world. And then he would humbly and quietly go about his day trying to make the world a little bit better. One handshake, one hug, one smile, one lunch at Midtown Cafe, one board meeting, one interfaith gathering at a time. And he did. He made our world and our community better. He brought us together. And I know he's here, but Dr. Shaul Kellner said it best, I think, when he said, "Avi taught us all just how much one person can make a serious difference in our community. Think of all the things that did happen that would not have happened had it not been for his unrelenting energy, passion, and leadership. Nashville is indeed a darker place for his absence, and it is on us now to bring the light." I hope Avi's memory inspires us to do so. And may we honor Avi today and every day by asking ourselves, how can I change the world? Please rise.
El Malachamim Shochein Bamaramim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanafei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utearim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Avram Shalach Le'olamo Bal Rachamim Yastirehu B'Seter Knafav Le'olamim V'yitzror Chaim Et Nishmato Adonai hu nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo V'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, we ask that you grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Avi Poster, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence in the shadow of your wings, that his soul may be bound up in the bond of everlasting life, as God is his inheritance. We ask that he rest in peace, and together we say, Amen. We are going to proceed with our burial, and what will happen is in a moment I will call a list of pallbearers forward, and we will ask that first the family and the pallbearers escort him out to the back into our cemetery. It is our custom in the Jewish tradition to bury our dead. Everyone who would like to participate in that ritual will be invited, Jewish or not, to take the shovel. It is an important act of closure. It is also a very kind act because he can't do that for himself. So it's something as a community we do for him. Following the burial, we will come back inside, and if you choose not to join us outside, you can just join us in the social hall. There will be more speeches and the continuing sharing of those memories. At this time, we're going to ask the family, as well as pallbearers Stuart Ralsky, Kevin Kaminsky, Tom Negri, Richard Berkowitz, Matthew, Samantha, and Daniel Libman, Greg Crocker, Erwin Venick, Stephen Bahamsel, Bill Urbanus, Larry Kaminsky, Dan Hogan, Brian Rubin, Ronnie Maurer, John Eager, Sylvia Rappaport, Jack Jacobson, and Floyd Schechter. Please help us as we escort Avi out.